Hey everyone, I'm Jason Roberts. In this video I'm going to show you how to make your shots more interesting by introducing some camera movement into them. If you're thinking about buying a slider or you've already got one of these Edelkrone sliders and you want to learn how to set it up, then this video is for you. So I've organised this video into 3 sections. In this first part, we're going to look at the hardware itself and how to set it up and mount a camera. In the second part, I'll show you how to use the Edelkrone app to set up some kind of motion. And then in the third part, we'll actually go and put the A7S III, which I'm recording on now, onto this, and I'll show you how it can add some movement into what is, at the minute, a static shot. In this video, I'm going to be using the Edelkrone SliderPLUS V5 Pro Long. There's different variations of this slider as well. When you first get this out of the box, you might find that it comes with this kind of belt attached. Notice how in this belt, we don't have any grooves or ridges. And this belt is for if you want to use the slider without the motorized unit. So basically you can just push it by hand to create the movement in your shots. In this video, we're going to be concentrating more on the ability of the Edelkrone SliderPLUS to actually use motion. And this is the motion control box, which we'll get into in a minute. I've already switched the belts on this particular slider. Notice these belts have these ridges in, and these ridges connect into this little wheel here. You notice that the ridges kind of connect to the belt, and that's what moves the slider along. To actually change the belt to the motorized belt, you need to take off this little bit here, and these are also magnetically added. So once you've switched out the belt and you've put on the motion control belt, there's a couple of different ways you can actually mount the slider. You can use the slider on a flat surface or almost flat surface like a table or some flat ground outside, or you can mount it to a tripod. If you're using the slider on a flat surface, you can see you've got 4 legs here, and to use these you just loosen off this, position the legs how you want, and then tighten this up. So it's pretty quick. And you can position these legs at slightly different angles depending on the surface you're using on. So for example, if you're using it outside and it's a tiny bit bumpy, you can try and position these legs so you get it flat and level. So if we turn it back over now, you can see that we've got it standing on these legs. Notice at the minute this carriage is not moving along the slider rails, and that's because there's a locking mechanism here. So you just need to push that in, and now the slider will move up and down. So it's important to make sure you unlock this before you try and move the slider with a motor. Otherwise you'll get horrible noise. So you can see the carriage moving up and down here. Notice this piece here underneath. If you don't want to mount this on a table, you can also mount it on a tripod. To do that, you attach the tripod here, and you can see that we've got this kind of dial here, and this helps to start screwing the tripod in to the actual unit. The next thing you need to do is actually attach the motorized slide module. So you've got a few different options to actually power the motor in this motorized slide unit. You can attach a battery bracket, as I've done here, and there's a couple of different options for Canon or Sony batteries. Depending on which type of battery you want to use, you need to buy a different bracket. And then you can see you've got this wire here that plugs into the power in on the actual module. You can also get an AC adapter, so if you're using it purely in a studio setting, rather than having to recharge batteries, you can power it from the AC socket. And Edelkrone, I think, have just come out with a new power option that enables you to power a whole setup at once, I think from a battery. So I think that's just so you can use one big battery rather than having to have multiple smaller batteries. So once you've decided on what kind of battery you want to use and you've got the correct battery bracket attached to the slider module, you can then go and push in the batteries. Once you've got the batteries firmly attached into the bracket, you can then go and mount this to the slider. So notice here on the slider, there's a couple of thumb screws. You need to loosen these off and then make sure that you've got the part with the cog here lined up. And then you simply slot it in. You might have to loosen these off a little bit more. Make sure it's flush against the actual slider unit itself, and then just tighten these up. I like to tighten gradually each one, just to make sure it's firmly in place. So that's the motorized slide module attached. The next thing we need to do is actually go and mount a camera. You can see that in the middle there's this screw, so it doesn't scratch things up in the bag. Edelkrone have added this feature where it pops down, and to pop it back up you need to push it and turn it. So Edelkrone actually suggests you don't use your finger to do this because you might like trap it or cut it. So I'm just using this little tool here. So I'm going to turn, and you can see now that it pops up. we can now go and attach a camera to the slider. So you can do this in a number of different ways. For example, you could use a ball head, just using the ball head off the GorillaPod here. You can attach that on, get it set up how you want, and then attach your camera. This has got a quick release plate on here. Alternatively, Edelkrone also make this thing called a flex tilt head. And basically this screws onto here and allows you to mount your camera at slightly different heights and angles. This slider also enables you to do incline motorized movements and time lapse. So if you're going to be doing incline, you might want to get one of these because it lets you level out the camera. Say the slider was on an incline like this, you can then use this to make sure that the camera is still level as it moves up and down. So that's something you might like to look into, especially if you're going to be doing incline movements. So to keep things simple, we're going to stick with a ball head. Just going to screw this back on. All we need to do now is fit a camera to it. Got the Joby GorillaPod quick release plate here. Just attach it to the ball head. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Now you're ready to set up the slider using the app. So once you've set up the physical slider itself, you can then go and install the Edelkrone app and use it to control the motion of the slider. So I'll throw up the app on the screen here so you can see what I'm doing. Notice you've got a choice of manual and smart pairing here. Smart pairing will attempt to automatically locate the Edelkrone equipment in the area. Before we do this, let's turn on the unit. I'm going to hold down the power button. And you can hear that little beep telling us it's turned on. And on the little display screen here, it's telling us it's not paired. So now we can go ahead and tap Smart Pairing. It's telling us to keep the phone close to the units and also to turn the units on and wait for the beep, which we just did. If you've got multiple Edelkrone products, such as the pan head, it will locate all of those and create what's called a bundle, so you can control them all together. So now we've turned it on, let's tap Start. You can hear that beep. It's now telling us on the unit itself that we're paired, and we can now use this slide button here. Move the slider to the left and to the right. You've also got these 3 pose buttons here. Basically a pose is a position in space where the equipment is or is pointing towards. So let's go and create a pose 1. Just going to move the slider to the left here. The further across you move this button, the quicker the slider moves. To save pose 1, I'm going to tap and hold. And you can hear that beep and the square gets highlighted to tell us we've got a pose saved. Let's go and create pose 2. What we'll do is maybe move it halfway across the slider, for example. Something about there will do. Once again, hold down pose 2, and now we've saved pose 2. You can choose the speed here, and this is the speed at which the slider will move between poses. To move to a pose using this speed slider, single tap. So I'm going to single tap pose 1, and you can now see the carriage starts moving. If you want to quickly move to a pose, just double tap it. And that'll move at maximum speed to that pose. And for example, if we wanted to quickly move to pose 2, just double tap it. And the slider will quickly move to pose 2. Notice you've got this ease in and ease out slider here. If I set this all the way down here, this is basically going to start the movement slowly and then gradually speed up. And then when it gets near the end, gradually slow down. So to test this out, I'm just going to single tap pose 1. And you can see how slowly the slider ramped up to the speed that we've set. And you can see how slowly it's slowing down to the end here. If we change this ease in, ease out all the way over here, single tap pose 2, notice we didn't get that gradual acceleration of the slider this time. And when we get to the end, it won't gradually slow down. It'll just more or less stop. So we can set the speed between movements. You can also tap these little camera buttons here, and that will allow you to take a photo representing what each pose is. So obviously, if you're using this kind of thing for an interview or talking head, you don't want to have to continually be tapping pose 2 and pose 1 when it gets to the end. Luckily, in the app, you can actually set it up in what's called loop mode, so it will continuously move between 2 poses. So to set up loop mode, all you need to do is take 2 fingers and then tap at the same time on both poses. Notice that both poses go yellow and the camera movement starts. When it gets to the end, it goes back to pose 2 And when it gets to pose 2, it'll go back to pose 1 and just keep looping endlessly. And then I'm just going to tap this to stop. So you can also use the app to set up time-lapse and stop motion. I'm not going to go into that today. For the final part of this video, what I'm going to do is actually set up this slider with the A7S III that I'm filming on, and I'll show you how it can add a bit of dynamic movement to a talking head shot like this. So this is what the same shot looks like now we've added some movement using the Edelkrone slider here. Same subject, same settings, same lighting, but now we've added a bit of camera movement to the shot. So I hope you can agree that it makes the shot look a bit more dynamic.